Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Double 18 podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Nagishi. Thanks for joining us on this Saturday special show together. My friend and longtime friend of ours from his own YouTube channel, DaWindyCity Productions, Rishab Skiri is joining us to do a 45-minute version of our Bears conversations. Rishab, how are you today? Good to see you once again. I think you're kind of muted right now, friend. I think you're muted.
Wait, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. I can hear you now. I was worried that you went silent after we were chatting before we went live.
No, yeah.
Anyway, I apologize for the silence there. But how are you? Good to see you again, my friend.
Yeah, I'm doing well, man. Mother's Day tomorrow, so just doing some prep for that. But
Yep.
Otherwise, yeah, just be in there. Schedule releases next week, so I'm definitely excited to talk about some Bears stuff.
Awesome. All right, but before we begin with our Bears conversation, quick news, and this was somewhat of a breaking news this morning. Derek Carr announced his retirement after, basically, dealing with a shoulder injury late in the season. Basically, he was kind of on IR. His future was somewhat up in the air. I think we started to hear his the chatter that the Saints could be looking to draft a quarterback with their 9th pick overall, 1 pick ahead of the Bears. Well, it was either Shadir Sanders or even Jackson Dart, etc. He recently denied about the shoulder injuries while he was talking at a church, and then now a few weeks later, he decided to retire because it looks as though I think his shoulder needs another surgery, and he decided that rather spending the entire season on IR, which I think that's what I think that's what the people were kind of discussing. Carr announced that it was probably not worth rehabbing, and decided to end his career, which lasted about 11 seasons. He was originally a 2014 second-round pick out of the out of Fresno State, drafted by the excuse me, the then Oakland Raiders, then became Las Vegas. He went to New Orleans. I think he's somewhat of a polarizing guy because I think he does what his facial expression, which I think a lot of people would call it the resting bitch faces, and his antics on the sidelines. For those who are not familiar with him, Rishab, I don't know if you have any thoughts on David Carr's sudden retirement and then what the future holds for the New Orleans Saints right now. What do you think?
Yeah, it kind of makes sense, to be honest, because the Saints aren't really going anywhere right now. Excuse me. I feel like if they were a contending team or a little bit better, or even if he was back with the Raiders, he might have thought about rehabbing and potentially playing after this. But it seems like his shoulder is basically shot right now, and he probably feels like he can't have the same level of play after an injury like this. And being 35 years old for him, it probably didn't make sense to come back. And he's already made so much money in his NFL career, so I kind of part of me saw this coming because we heard reports about his shoulder injury a couple weeks before the NFL draft. That's why they were even considering drafting a quarterback at number 9. So it's interesting they didn't draft one in the first round. They could have went after,
they drafted a old rookie out of Louisville named Tyler Shaw.
Yeah.
Now he's going to be battling with Spencer Rattler, the holdover from a year ago for the a quarterback position this upcoming season. So,
yeah, I thought they could maybe go after Jackson Dart. Maybe that would have been a more higher upside pick. But we'll see what happens for them. It's interesting because they have a new head coach now too, Kellen Moore, offensive minded head coach. So it's going to be fun to see what happens with the Saints. But do the Bears have the Saints on their schedule? I can't recall. Not too sure about that.
We'll get to that in a little bit
Yeah.
because we're going to talk about the upcoming NFL schedule, and we're going to kind of discuss previewing the week 1, week 2, week 17, and so forth. But yeah, he's always had a love-hate relationship with the Raiders fans as well as the Saints fans, because he was one of those good but not great players. And thank you very, very much, Celeste, for joining us once again, and wherever you might be. Thank you for watching us tonight. And if you have any questions and thoughts about the Bears and the NFL, feel free to join us. Thank you for joining me on this Saturday afternoon, where you may be. And again, getting back to Derek Carr, I think a lot of the Bears fans can attest to the quarterback, a conundrum where, Carr was one of those good but not great players. He only went to 1 playoff games, and then the fans, kind of start to turn on, him being, not able to elevate himself as well as to elevate the team to that next level. So in 2 places, I think, the fans were really completely, became really, really frustrated with him. Of course, the Saints fans, it's understandable, but, for him to play this long, I think it wouldn't surprise me. There's a bit of a fan, both sides that feeling a little, I'm not going to say warm and fuzzy, but at least, they will look back on his career with, at least that, he was a professional, and he was somebody who has done a lot of good things off the field, being a very devoted Christian man himself. And, I think, as much as people like to shit on him, for the lack of better words, for what he did on the field, I think what he did, as a man off the field, and, I think there will be a possibility that people will probably look at him a little more differently once, he retires and perhaps go into coaching or even goes into retirement. For the Saints, I think, their cap is a major, major mess, because they always keep pushing the money backloaded. And it's quite, interesting how the Saints have really, really skirted this for a long, long time. They also have, another offensive lineman, I believe, David Ramczyk, who also retired because of his, degenerate knee condition. So they're really, really in a terrible, terrible spot right now. Carr signed a 4-year, $150 million contract in 2023, and now 2 years later, he's out of the his retirement, and you only get $30 million in cash and salary cap relief. So, I think the Saints are now finally in a position to, really, really tank and perhaps maybe go for, Arch Manning sweepstakes if there is one. His father, was a Saints quarterback who was drafted in the 1st round. And then, Arch Manning, who's actually from New Orleans, went to high school there, same as Peyton Manning, Cardinal Newman High School down there. And then Arch, if he puts up a decent number, could he be, entering the 2026 NFL draft, knowing that the Saints could be, maybe looking at him or even drooling at him, with the Manning connections and stuff like that. So there is an interesting storyline for the Saints to follow. I don't know. I know the Saints probably wasn't really high amongst the experts coming into this season, maybe 4 or 5 wins. But I don't know if the Saints could be, maybe 2 wins or 3 wins at the maximum if they're really, really going to tank right now, Rishab.
Yeah, they're not going to win that many games this year. I think it does seem likely they're tanking for a starting quarterback next year. But that also makes it weird that they drafted a quarterback so high in the 2nd round. That kind of feels like
an old one at that too. Yeah,
feels like a really big wasted pick to me. So yeah, I'm not sure what the Saints are gonna do. Like they desperately needed a rebuild, like with all their salary cap troubles. So maybe they'll try to get out of the cap troubles for the next 2 years and hopefully rebuild for their sake. But it's not really, you can't really say anything exciting about the Saints' future right now. Besides maybe the head coach Kellen Moore could be good, but
in time, yeah. Yeah, they also have Alvin Kamara, who's getting up there in age, age-wise, mileage-wise for a running back. Chris
Mhm.
Olave has also suffered multiple concussions, unfortunately. Michael Thomas has been unheard of for a while, largely due to his injuries as well. It will be interesting what the Saints will do when they finally decide to, Philip, our good friend, Kellen Moore becomes the first head coach QB1. Yeah, that would be funny, if Kellen Moore wasn't too old. But listen, Kellen Moore, I'm sure this is not what he, envisioned as a head coach, taking over such an organization that's in a bad cap hell. If you think that the Bears were in a terrible cap hell several years back when Ryan Pace was mortgaging the future, with back in 2021, and Ryan Poles had to clean up his mess. The Saints is going to be a long a job where a lot of the veterans have to be either reworked or probably most likely be cut in order to get themselves into a more manageable salary cap situation moving forward. All right, let's move on to the Bears stuff. Another interesting. We finally we're going to try and put a bow on the draft, since you and I did the live stream on the first 2 days together. Give me your thoughts overall on the Bears draft. Quickly, about who is your favorite pick and who's the pick that you're like scratching your head or you want to see more out of moving forward.
Yeah, I would say favorite pick, potentially Luther Burden, just because of the
Yeah.
value that we got. It feels like entering the NFL draft, I didn't think we needed a receiver that high, especially in the first 3 rounds. I thought it probably would not have made sense to draft a receiver at that level or at that round. But because Luther Burden just fell to you that far, which was insane. I mean, he could have gone top 15, top 20 in the NFL draft this year. I think it was just like those too good to pass up. So the fact that we have 3 just like dominant, like number 1 type receivers now for at least 4 years. I mean, Rome Odunze is on contract for 4 more years. I think DJ Moore is also under contract for 4 more years. And then Burden also for 4 more years. You can get 3 like amazing receivers all together on the same team for 4 years. I mean, that's incredible. Like Caleb is going to have so many good weapons to throw to. And like Ben Johnson's going to be able to scheme these guys up in a way in which like there's going to be somebody open at some point, like every single play. You would hope so, right? Like there's just insane level of talent now here on the Chicago Bears. So I would say that's my favorite. As for my least favorite, I would definitely say Ruben Hippolyte in the 4th round. I think that was a pick that nobody really saw coming. And I mean, we did need a 3rd linebacker somewhere, but he just was not on many people's draft boards whatsoever. Like a lot of people did not even have him being drafted. So to take him in the 4th round is like, in my opinion, a big reach. I don't know why they did it, but you can only hope that, Dennis Allen and like Ryan Poles see something in him that the rest of us don't. I mean, he's ridiculously fast. He ran like a 4.4 40-yard dash. So, on special teams, he could be fantastic, flying up and down the field. But I kind of questioned the value in the 4th round because I thought there were some better players there, like Braden Swinson, a couple others, maybe like a running back. Although I'm happy with Kyle Monangai, but it just was not the best pick to me. And it kind of seems like Ryan Poles in the 3rd and 4th rounds is like sometimes been wasting these picks. So that kind of irritates me a little bit. But besides that, like I thought the entire draft was really good. Like if you even go to the other the later round picks, like even the 5th round, like we selected Zal Frazier, cornerback. That was a really good pick. I mean, he slid down a little bit further than where he was projected to go. So I thought that kind of made up for the value that we lost in drafting Ruben Hippolyte. But overall, we addressed a lot of needs. Some of them still exist. Like we didn't get a safety. That kind of irritates me. I wish we could get a backup safety. And like running back, we drafted a little bit later than I thought. A lot of us thought we draft running back in round 1. Ashton Genty, if he was there, or maybe even Omarion Hampton. So we waited all the way for round 7 to draft a running back. So that kind of surprised me. But Overall, I thought it was a pretty good draft, top to bottom. Like you should be able to get at least 3 long-term contributors from this draft based on what I see on paper.
Yeah, my favorite, of course, is probably the first rounder. Colston Loveland. I just felt that he was a victim, fortunately, of the Michigan's quarterback conundrum. Not to mention the coaching changes, etc. He had to play all season with a shoulder injury. We'll get to the Bears rookie camp stuff in a minute, but I do like the Luther Burden pick as well. I was able to write up a quick article on how Luther Burden is so motivated after dropping into the second round in the draft on draft night. I know there is a YouTube channel dedicated to both Luther and I believe his fiance. There was a video on that one. So if you want to look it up, go check it out. It was a great 12, 13-minute video behind the scenes of Luther waiting to hear his name on the first day and then finally hearing his name on the second day. Go check it out. I do also like that Luther Burden pick. I'm coming around that. Of course, I think one pick before on the 38th, the New England Patriots selected Trayvon Henderson. I know there was a talk that the Bears wanted to move up to Tennessee's spot at 35, but there wasn't enough draft capital to move up there to get that running back, unfortunately. So the Bears decided to settle for picking Luther Burden. And, I was quickly able to write up an article, and they were kind enough to post the about how Luther Burden's situation kind of parallels in comparison with when Amon-Ra St. Brown dropped all the way to the 4th round. And, I was able to write about, how Ben Johnson, who was able to, develop Amon-Ra St. Brown's talent in his offense, should be able to harness Luther Burden's, motivation. And I know there's and to me, Luther Burden is in a very good spot. He couldn't have asked for a better position. Luther Burden working with Ben Johnson and his NFL comp, Luther Burden's that is DJ Moore, who's already on the team. So for Luther Burden, for him, if he's motivated and if his head's in the right spot, he is going to be a very, very good player. Somebody, may not be like a, 1,000-yard receiver right away, but I think that Ben Johnson has the opportunity to utilize him in many, many ways, kind of like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams type of role, even, Deebo Samuel, as a, like a running back out of the backfield, or even perhaps, on the reverses and stuff like that. So I'm really excited about that pick. And I do agree with you about, Ruben Hippolyte, for a running back, a linebacker, I never heard of him. I know there were some people even calling that like the biggest reach one of the biggest reaches in the draft. So, it's going to be very, very interesting how, a guy like Hippolyte, with a different situation than Burden, Burden dropping out of the first round, Hippolyte being called the biggest reach in the draft for the Bears, or even in the entire draft. There are always an extra source of motivation for many of these players, whether you're young or old. You always find ways to, motivate. That's what makes players great, even after, they become a veteran, and, they always need a source of motivation, whether it's coming from, a fan, a media, or like an opponent, trash talking. Let's see how Burden and, Hippolyte, steps up and elevate their games. I do agree with Phil's, probably the best value pick. I think Zal Frazier kind of dropped out because he was quite an old for a prospect. I think he's 24, maybe turning 25 as well. Hippolyte moving to safety, there's a possibility, because I don't think he's a big linebacker by any stretch of the imagination. His 4.39 speed is very, very intriguing as well. So, I'm very curious to see what Dennis Allen is going to use him as a linebacker, or maybe like a blitzing linebacker, or maybe like a safety, because of his lack of his size, as a maybe like a box to box, in the box linebacker, that will likely to be maybe used move more or less like a rovering type player to kind of get a better matchup to utilize his speed, rather than having to go up against 300-pound linebackers, on rundowns, or even maybe bigger tight ends moving forward. My guest tonight is Rishab Skiri from his YouTube channel, DaWindyCity Productions, talking about the Chicago Bears and the NFL around the league on the Double A Team podcast on this Saturday afternoon. Let's look at the another news that I wanted to kind of touch with you, Rishab. George Pickens was traded by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and if you follow the NFL, this trade rumor have been on on the back burner for quite a while. And if you're a Bears fan, back in the 2022 NFL draft, Rishab, I know a lot of people wanted George Pickens. That was the draft that I think many people wanted Pickens, but the Bears ended up selecting Kyler Gordon with their very first pick under Ryan Poles, and then Jaquan Brisker. I wrote in on my Bears goggles on them, but try to pull up the article here in a moment. But I feel like the Bears kind of averted a disaster, considering the track record of Steelers receivers who leave Pittsburgh, and then they turn into like a I hate to use this word, but like turn into like a total dog shit. And as a Bears fans, we all know how the Chase Claypool trade turned out to be. And I read that the Bears averted a disaster that the fans have been begging for. When you look back at that draft 3 years ago, what were your thoughts? If you had any thoughts on George Pickens, and what are you feeling about George Pickens after he left Pittsburgh and now go to Dallas, which obviously is now their headache or problem, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, originally I was also mad at the Bears not drafting George Pickens. I thought we needed a receiver really badly that year, and he would have been good for the Bears that year potentially. But at the same time, like you mentioned, like he just has so much like anger, maybe character issues to some extent. Like I don't think he would have been okay with being on a team that was losing so many games and Justin Fields potentially not delivering the ball to him accurately sometimes, or just getting sacked, right? So I think that could have been a disaster. And Kyler Gordon was just such a better pick than George Pickens would have been. I mean, Kyler Gordon is a top 4 nickel cornerback in the NFL, if not the best right now. He's one of the best to do it. So the fact that the Bears got a player that's elite at his position, that they extended to a second contract, I think that was a big win for the Bears. Now, Jaquan Brisker, you could argue, was not as good of a pick, but even Jaquan, when he's been healthy, he's been really good. It's just that he's not stayed healthy, and it's hard to predict injuries. You can't predict concussions were going to happen, for him randomly, right? So I think Brisker also was like a good pick on paper. And they did dodge a bullet by not drafting George Pickens. Like I firmly believe if we got George Pickens, this would have been the same result, except it would have been earlier potentially. We could have traded George Pickens maybe after his rookie year, or like after 2 years, because he won't want to be on the Chicago Bears with all the losing that we're doing. So yeah, I mean, overall, it's just funny how the Steelers keep on getting these like head case receivers that have to be drafted after, or have to be traded after a couple of years, because they're fighting with the coaching staff, they're fighting with the team.
Yeah.
And Mike Tomlin is a head coach that usually can like calm down like really agitated players or like players with issues, but it just seems like for the receivers, like all the Steelers receivers eventually go down this path of like just like pissing off the team management, pissing off the coaching staff. So it is interesting to see. But from the Cowboys' perspective, I think they made a pretty good trade, because even if they can't re-sign George Pickens, they get a third-round compensatory pick if he leaves to go elsewhere. So they're basically getting George Pickens for free, even if he does leave. So
They gave up a third, and then if he leaves next year, he gets a third
Yeah.
pick. So that's basically a wash, you know.
Yeah, so I mean, overall, good trade for the Cowboys. Bad move by the Steelers to draft him probably in the second round if this was the result and they lost. I mean, I guess they didn't lose a lot of games, but like they didn't go anywhere in the playoffs the last couple of years. So I would definitely prefer the draft the Bears had for sure.
Right. I'm posting an article that I linked on the Sporting News, the lengthy problems that George Pickens has been involved in. His first one, of course, was the Georgia Tech fight back in 2019 as a freshman, and then this is another interesting one. He also squirted of water while on the sideline against Tennessee quarterback Jared Garantano, which I think really pissed off Kirby Smart. And then he always posted about his complaints about his usage. The unsportsmanlike conduct fine against the Bengals in a win. And his get this, in 2023 season alone, he has fined about $200,000. You think about that. That is amazing. He makes about $1.318 million, and imagine losing like over like Jesus, what 15% of your salary on
That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, it is crazy, man. Just an incredible immaturity that he is showing, unfortunately. He just have to. It's a pattern. We've seen that again with Chase Claypool, how he, disintegrated with the Chicago Bears. Yeah, good luck with the Dallas Cowboys. I think I feel like Ryan Poles feels vindicated for drafting the right guy. And then rewarding a talented player. Kyler Gordon is definitely a talented player, but also win for him personally because of the how Kyler Gordon has been professional on and off the field with high character guys. I think. I know still people talk about not drafting Jalen Carter a year later, after his troubles with, drag racing and, drunken drivingness or whatever. I think, as much as people will complain about the Bears maybe not taking a chance on a guy who's, probably assholes or have a lot of, personality problems, I think maybe the Bears at least probably won't take a chance, or maybe they're at least, in my opinion, on a professional level, I think they are able to take on head cases a little bit better than where the Bears were a couple of years ago when they were just basically tore down everything and had to start from the very, very bottom. Let's kind of put a into the show with the storylines. Not the storylines. We still have a couple more things to talk about. Next to last one, rookie camp and the storylines to follow. I don't know if you've done any videos on the UDFAs, basically. Any undrafted free agents that you're kind of interested in following and who you think has a chance to maybe make the team?
To be honest, I don't think any of the UDFAs have a chance to really make the team, and that more speaks to the volume of like talent on the Chicago Bears now. I feel like we're like 4 or 5 deep at each position. Like I can't really think of maybe I didn't even really look at like a lot of the UDFAs to be honest, but if we do have any safeties, maybe a safety could potentially win a job just because we don't have the best safety depth right now. But at any other position, I can't really see us. I can't see any UDFA making the team. I mean, like, yeah, and even the UDFAs that we did get, I heard from people that like follow this stuff that we didn't really have like a very exciting UDFA class this year as opposed to previous years. And again, that comes down to the fact that we had like 9 picks or 8 picks in the draft. So like we already drafted a lot of guys, and like last couple of years we've had so many draft picks every single year. So at some point the roster just gets too full of players and you can't really give these guys chances. But it'll be curious. I mean, it'll be fun to see like who shows up in training camp, who has a really good preseason, because I'm sure it's going to be some fan favorite that does really good in preseason. He's going to be cut probably, and then Bears fan base is going to be mad. But like this happens every single year. Like I never really put faith in UDFAs doing anything for us because it's so rare that a UDFA even makes the roster or like contributes at all. So, but do you have any on your mind?
Well, I'm posting my article that I wrote this, and that got posted recently about the UDFAs that I've mentioned 5 names. Jeremy Robinson from Kansas. He was actually a teammate with Austin Booker in Kansas, and he had a 5.5 sacks last season. Honorable mention, Big 12. Somehow went undrafted. Bears definitely need another edge rusher, young or veteran. I think they're probably maybe leaning more towards a veteran, but if there are no good veteran options available, this is a guy who has to probably, beat out guys like Daniel Hardy and Dominique Robinson to make the team. So it'll be very, very interesting to see, how he performs. At least, with Austin Booker already on the team, he should probably get a pretty good intel on the new coaching staff and the inner works of the Chicago Bears. Number 4, I put Jonathan Kim, the kicker. We know that Cairo Santos struggled last year, especially from the 49 yard range where, we all remember he had a kick block 3 straight in that game against the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings because of the low trajectory. Kim, made a little over 90% of the field goals from the 49 yard range last year. If Santos is struggling with his, trajectory, and the fact that I think Santos is making over $33 million and he's in his 30s. If Kim outperforms him, I would not be shocked if Kim makes the team and becomes a kicker, or at least be brought back in case if Santos struggles or suffers an injury later in the year, provided that he's not on somebody else's roster. Power Echols, from North Carolina, the linebacker. I jokingly wrote that name alone should qualify him to be on the team. He's somewhat of an undersized linebacker, under 6 feet. He's a will or 4-3 linebacker in a nickel sub package guy. Decent coverage skills, good sideline to sideline speed to cover. I think he should be motivated to, perform because, his fellow ACC linebacker, as we talked about, Ruben Hippolyte. I know I misspelled here, Rube Hippolyte, but probably missed the N here. I think got drafted because of his 4.39 speed, and that an ACC guy who was probably not heralded and probably should have been more of a late round or UDFA just like Echols. I think he should definitely have a shot at making the team, or maybe given a shot at the special teams as a special team standout more so than anything else. Number 2, mentioned 2 safeties. One of them is Tysheen Johnson, very undersized guy. Probably one reason, number 1, why he went undrafted. He played at Ole Miss in Oregon. He is undersized, but he definitely make up for his speed and coverage skills more so. The Bears are set at safety with Kevin Byard, Brisker, and then Jonathan Owens being more of a top backup, but they need a depth. There's no question. They didn't draft the safety in this year's draft, much like they didn't draft a running back high. I think it was more of a different circumstances for the Bears when it comes to the running back. So I think they turn to UDFAs for maybe depth and hoping that somebody would emerge. And another guy, of course, is the number 1 safety, Major Burns. Again, name alone should qualify for him to make the team. It's he plays safety, which he fits the name, both good and bad, literally. When he gets burned in coverage, he gets burned or something like that again. Sorry for the poor joke, but this guy's a 6'2", 207 pounds. So he is built like what an average NFL safety would look like from physical standpoint. Played 5 years in the SEC, obviously the best conference in college football. Started at Georgia before transferring to LSU. Again, I mentioned Bayard, Jaquan Brisker, and backup Jonathan Owens. They're all out of contracts next year. So the chances are, the Bears need depth. And more likely next year's draft, they're going to be, focusing on safety. And even if Brisker somehow plays the entire season without a single concussion, Lord knows, are the Bears still comfortable, or if the Bears fans comfortable with giving him that kind of a big money, 4-year, $55-60 million range, for a guy with multiple concussions. There are questions about safety. So I truly believe that the development of these two young safeties that they plucked off the UDFA market, I would definitely keep an eye on these guys, not just for the rookie camps, but of course the OTAs and the training camps, and then just see, how good of a player they are going to be, and if they're going to be able to make the team as a depth piece. Moving forward. My guest today this afternoon is Rishab Skiri from the DaWindyCity NFL YouTube channel, talking about the Chicago Bears and the NFL in general. All right, let's close out with the what everybody is thinking of, or everybody's on their mind. Previewing the NFL 2025 schedule. You might have already seen some information leaked pertaining to the international games on Twitter. Thankfully, or fortunately, unfortunately, depending on where you live, the Bears are not involved in the international games. So if you have to get up really, really early for the Jacksonville game last year, at least you don't have to deal with that this year, thankfully, for many of those. I know there was somebody that I posted on Twitter that was from England or Scotland, talking about the Cowboys schedule. There's this gentleman talking about. I'm going to post it here in a moment. They're talking about week 1 matchup between the Dallas Cowboys and the Chicago Bears on week 1. Kickoff 7:30 local time. Now, both the Chicago and Dallas is on a central time zone. So 7:30 or 7:15, 7:20 would mean, I would guess, Rishab, that's the Sunday Night Football on NBC.
Mm-hmm.
That would be correct, right?
That should be, yeah. Looks like it.
Right. And the Dallas Cowboys is actually playing the Chicago Bears, and they're actually visiting the Chicago Bears in this year. So it's Matt Eberflus, revenge game for him, as well as perhaps for the Bears. This is an opportunity to prove that how bad and incompetent Matt Eberflus was as a head coach, and maybe chance to embarrass his Matt Dweeberflus, as Philip has responded. What do you think? Do you think that week 1? I know this might not seem to maybe all that enticing for many fans across the country. On week 1, the Super Bowl champion possibly will get the Thursday night game, of course. I know they are playing the Kansas City Chiefs, and I think they might want to save that game for a little bit later in the season, when both teams are hopefully at a much better team. Dan Wiederer of the Chicago Tribune has stated that the Bears could get the Thursday night game week 1 against the Philadelphia Eagles. What are your thoughts on the potential 2025 schedule and the reports that you're kind of hearing?
I would love to play the Cowboys week 1 on Sunday Night Football. I think that would be a win for the Bears. I mean, obviously it's hard to predict that, this early, and you don't want to predict too much before the game start. But I do feel like the Bears at this point in time have the much better head coach. Cowboys, like Dak Prescott's coming off a major injury. He basically missed all of last year. Cowboys have like a lot of departures on defense too, so I feel like that's obviously like a much more winnable game than the Eagles game if we play the Eagles week 1. But regardless of who we play, I think the Bears' energy is going to be very high in the first game because we have a new coaching staff, and you generally tend to win the first game with the new coaching staff. Like even with Matt Eberflus, his first game ever, we beat the 49ers at Soldier Field, if you guys remember. Like we should not have won that game, but because of the new energy and Trey Lance being bad and like all those factors, we won that game. But yeah, like the Cowboys would be really interesting. I think that is a good game for all of the nation to watch. I mean, Cowboys are such a big brand, and every time the Bears and Cowboys play, it's always on either America's Game of the Week or like Monday Night Football or something like that. So this would be a very, very well watched game. And what is that on the screen you're showing? Is that like a prediction?
Oh, it's Yahoo Sports. This is their wish for the upcoming 2025 schedule. And let me pull up the title here. A wish list of big stage games and plenty of theater. So they also want the Bears and the Eagles to kick off the schedule. Ben Johnson versus Vic Fangio. This could be an interesting matchup. And then they said that the week 2 Bears at the Packers here in Chicago. We know that the back and forth between the Ben Johnson versus Matt LaFleur. It seems like Ben Johnson is Matt LaFleur. Ben Johnson might have gotten into Matt LaFleur's head. There seemed to be a rivalry there. Obviously, this could be a very interesting, of course. LaFleur certainly owns the Bears, 11-1, but that one game. The week 17 game that the Bears finally ended their losing streak up in Green Bay. Week 3, Bears Giants. They said it's a Hard Knocks Bowl. Of course, that both teams have been in the Hard Knocks last year as well. They're saying week 4. This is their wishful thinking. Bears and the Bengals. Joe Burrow versus Caleb Williams. This is going to be a very interesting game. Week 5, this is, they said that the Lions and the Bears, this is a late afternoon slate on Fox. So much intriguing storylines involving the Lions and the Bears. There's no real need for explanation for there. Oh, and Saints do play the Bears.
There you go.
Okay. There you go. Of course, this is a reunion of Dennis Allen, who spent 15 years in New Orleans, DC, and then of course the head coach was dismissed in November of last year when this team was in a terrible spiral. This is also an interesting matchup from a draft perspective. Calvin Banks was taken one spot ahead of the Bears, and the Bears ended up drafting Colston Loveland. We'll see how good the Bears and either rookies are at this point. Week 7, Bears Vikings. This is an interesting battle. The Vikings have also been on the thorn on the Bears side. Kevin O'Connell versus Ben Johnson matchup. This is another interesting one. And then they say that the week 9 Bears Commanders on Sunday Night Football. I don't think there's really not much of an explanation needed on this one. I think, this Commanders game, I think this definitely will be a national television. No matter what week it is, I will definitely predict that one. I think this is an easier game. You could put a money on that one for sure. And then week 10, Bears Steelers. It's interesting because is Aaron Rodgers going to be the quarterback for the Steelers? Obviously, the double check guy who's owned the owned the Bears for a long period of time. Will they get another crack at him if Bears, if Aaron Rodgers becomes the Steelers quarterback by then? Bears Raiders, interesting matchup. They have Monday Night Football November 17th. Bears get a close up against the. I got to tell you, we missed out on Ashton Genty, and now the Bears are forced to play against Ashton Genty this year. So, hopefully, Bears fans will, maintain their professionalism as to, facing Ashton Genty and, control themselves for missing out on him. Bears Ravens, boy, this is a really, really tough game, I tell you.
That's gonna be tough.
4 years ago, yeah. This is a tough game, close to Thanksgiving. 4 years ago, when the Bears hosted the Ravens, obviously Lamar Jackson was not playing. I think it was Caleb Huntley or something like that.
They lost that game.
Yeah. They lost that game, unfortunately. They led the game, but they lost the game, unfortunately. Having to face Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, and Mark Andrews. Todd Monken, one of the guys who's actually from Wheaton, we talked about, was a strong Bears candidate. Had it not been for Ben Johnson, we talked about it. If Ben Johnson wasn't taking the Bears job, I'm definitely a fan of Todd Monken taking the job. Obviously, for what he has done, offensive coordinator with the University of Georgia, and of course with the the Baltimore Ravens with Lamar Jackson. Bears Vikings on Thanksgiving night. Oh, this is a very interesting one. Last year we saw the Matt Eberflus fired against the Lions, and now this year we got another Thanksgiving game. Albeit against the different opponent. This could be pushed into Black Friday slot possibility as well. Black Friday game. Week 14, Cowboys Bears again. Matt Eberflus returns to Chicago. There's an interesting matchup now. Does Matt Eberflus, the DC, can he figure out something against Williams? This is going to be very, very interesting. Bears Packers December 14th. Bears 49ers, another road game against the this is the very first game when after Eberflus got fired and and then the Bears got completely outgained in that game. The first game. I forgot the name of the interim coach, Brown, something like that. But and then week 17, the Bears and the Browns. Hopefully, this could be where Shadir Sanders could be starting, or even Dylan Gabriel. Browns look into the future, and then Bears Lions January 4th. We have to wait until Ben Johnson, last game of the season, to make his triumphant return, hopefully, to the Detroit Lions. What do you think of this schedule? Do you think any of this is going to, maybe pan out, or at least turn out to be true?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Some of them probably are going to end up being true. But yeah, it's really tough to say. I mean, we'll see like when it officially comes out. I mean, on the day that it does come out, usually they start leaking like a few hours earlier.
Yeah, they're going to be leaking all over the place on all over the network. So you might want to kind of pay attention to Twitter. But I do think that what do you think? How many national games do you think they get? Monday night, Thursday night, Sunday night. How many do you think? Is it 4, or do you think that's too much for the Bears considering how bad they've been?
I think it'll be 4. I think even in 2018 with Matt Nagy, like his first year, I think we got 4 or 5 primetime games. 2 of them were flexed, I believe, or at least one of them was flexed.
It was back to back. I remember week 1 it was against the Packers.
Yeah,
Sunday night. Then week 2, I believe it was against the Seahawks on Monday Night Football. I remember that. So it was back to back.
I mean, it could even be 5, like Cabs is saying here. Like I could very easily see 5 just because there's so much hype around the Bears right now. Ben Johnson, people are hyped about him. Caleb Williams, a big name for sure. So I could totally see 4 or 5. I mean, last year we had 3, and we had such a bad season last year. So I think the expectation is the Bears are going to be a hopefully playoff level team this year. So
absolutely,
I could see a lot, yeah.
Yeah, Washington game. I'll guarantee you that will be a national.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's so much juicy storylines about the Hail Mary, the opening game. I think the opening credit will be about the Hail Mary. Tyreek Stevenson waving, and then they're tipping the ball, and then they'll talk about the downfall of the Bears and the upward trajectory of the Commanders. They're going to talk about that all throughout the night. It's like a beating a dead horse for sure. Cab saying Packers, Lions, Washington. I definitely could be interesting. Again, as we were mentioning, Ben Johnson versus Matt LaFleur. Trash talking. This is going to be very, very interesting. Hopefully both teams are in good position whenever they face each other, whether it's Sunday afternoon or Sunday night, Monday night, or wherever it might be. Hopefully the game has much more of a relevance compared to recent years, especially after the Bears finally put an end to the losing streak. I think the Bears definitely have more motivation, and they're not scared of the Packers anymore. So I definitely could see, the argument that one of the Packers game, as Cabs is saying, could be on national television. Okay, so again, thank you for joining us tonight. This is today. Rishab has a Mother's Day stuff to do. Thank you for joining me on that.
Sure.
Rishab, thank you to 752 people joining us this afternoon. I know we went a little bit over, Rishab, but I really appreciate you sticking with me and being patient once again. Any final words? Any final thoughts on this? On this Mother's Day? Tomorrow,
I'm excited for next week for sure. The NFL schedule release is one of the most exciting times of the off season.
Right.
That's where people are going to make their travel plans and everything. So yeah, really looking forward to next week and the entire off season, rest of the off season. Hopefully it passes by fast because it's going to be pretty exciting Bears season. So yeah, thank you everybody for watching.
Well, appreciate the 750 people, Cabs, Celeste, and Philip and Honey McMahon. Thank you for the engaging comments, for joining us this afternoon, and thank you once again. And we look forward to joining you once again for the live stream. We'll post it on X. By the way, tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern, I'll be back with my regular co-host Ken Fang from Awful Announcing to talk about the weekend sports. Till then, enjoy your Mother's Day weekend, and we look forward to seeing you next time. So long, everybody.